Every person has a story, but not everyone has a place to tell it. I've interviewed amazing people all over the planet. I want you to meet them.
Hi, I'm Terri Givens, and I'm the most interesting person you've never heard of because I actually competed against Jackie Joyner-Kersee when she was at UCLA and I was at Stanford in 1984.
Terri Givens,
Yes.
welcome to the most interesting person you've never heard of podcast.
Thank you.
And you really are. And I don't usually do this. I've never done this. Well, there's a few things I've never done. We're going to talk a lot about firsts today.
Mm-hmm.
One is I don't usually do this in the morning.
So thank you for,
well,
extending
you're
me
special.
that favor.
And I don't usually we talk. I've been a couple books we've talked about, but I'm really going to talk about this book a lot because I'm super proud of you, first of all. And we haven't seen each other in probably 40 years, 35 to 40 years. It's bizarre.
Yep.
But I have to read this intro of who you are because it's amazing. And you're not going to gloat about it. I know that. So here you go. Terri Givens, a political science entrepreneur, born in Spokane, right?
Just up the street.
Just up the street from our studios here at Corner Booth Media, where you attended Gonzaga Prep, completed your undergraduate degree at Stanford. You ran track there, I know.
I did.
Also, member of the track team. Studied at the University of UCLA in political science.
Yes.
Right? Wrote your PhD dissertation. First book on the rise of radical right in Europe was your first book. You began your academic career at the University of Washington. My daughter you just met is a Husky. She's very proud to meet you. Go Huskies. 12 years at the University of Texas at Austin. Founding.
Not so happy about the Longhorns, but it's okay.
Well, you don't have to be.
Yeah.
I'm not either. Although they are number one in the country right now as we do this. Founding director of the on the Center of Curriculum and International Affairs before returning to the faculty to continue research on the politics of immigration, anti-discrimination policy in Europe. You were the provost at Menlo College, the first probably female and black provost at Menlo College.
Yep.
Another first, right? Left the position and started the Center for Higher Education Leadership, now known as Brighter Higher Ed. Mm-hmm. And you and your husband Michael live in Menlo Park, California. You did. I did. But you also taught
at McGill.
At McGill, which is in Montreal. And yes. Now you're currently where?
I am at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, British Columbia.
Wow. You've gotten around.
I have. I've been popping. And we haven't left Menlo Park. My husband still works in Silicon Valley, basically. And so we kind of commute back and forth.
And you have two sons.
I do.
And they're living there?
Nope. One has graduated from Lewis and Clark College, and he's still living in Portland. Okay. And the other one just celebrated his 21st birthday, and he is living at home and working at Starbucks and figuring out his next steps.
There you go. I got a few of those in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So what's it like to be back in Spokane, and why are you back here?
Well, I'm back here because
we've been trying to do this.
Oh, I know.
For like 6 months or something.
Yeah, at least. Actually, I reconnected with Gonzaga Prep in the summer of 2020. 2020. When basically some black alums were upset about, prep not maybe doing enough to promote diversity at the high school. And so actually a friend of mine reached out and said, Terri, you needed to contact Cindy Rappel. And I'm like, oh.
Who was the principal?
Was the principal, yes.
And I said me when I was there.
And I don't think I took a class with her, but I very clearly remember her.
Yeah.
I mean, Cindy was a force on campus.
Oh, a force, yes.
So anyway, I reached out to her and we had a long conversation. They needed somebody to come in, and I just written this book. It actually wasn't even out yet. But I said, I can talk about my
radical
story.
Empathy.
Yes, radical empathy.
Which we will
be talking about.
Well,
in any case, that led to an engagement with working with the faculty and staff, which, was COVID. So we were doing all of this online, which was interesting. But I also was connecting with Michael Dougherty, who's the president of Prep, and eventually he got smart and said, I know, we can get Terri for free by just having her be on our board.
He's really smart.
He's a really smart guy. So I agreed to be on the board. And, I really care about prep and Spokane. And, it was, I was very happy to take on that role. As I said, as I was there the last couple of days for our board meetings, I was, in many ways, I represent, Black students, but also first generation students. And I was a first generation college goer, and I know the ups and downs of all of that. And
I have both my stepkids are first generation at Eastern right now. They're almost graduating, and
oh, that's great.
It's getting them there is a challenge.
Yes, it is.
I don't know if I'm gonna go, and you had to have dealt with some of that.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the interesting thing to me is I the other reason I feel like I owe something to prep is there's a story behind all of this, of course, is that my brother, who played football, was at Lewis. I'm the youngest of 7, and everybody in my family before us had graduated from Lewis and Clark. And so I was in my freshman
LC Tigers, man.
Yeah, then there's something else.
Absolutely. Well, I have stuff to say about your brother, Craig, because he was one of my heroes.
Yes.
As a kid.
Right.
So anyway.
Well, he was an amazing football player.
He was.
And but during my freshman year at LC and his junior year, we got into this conflict with the football coach, and my parents weren't happy about it and felt he was being racist. And we are Catholic, and so my parents said, "Okay, fine, you guys aren't going to do." They tried to get the administration to deal with it. They wouldn't do anything, so. They said, Craig, you're going to prep. And so he did. And then by the end of that year, they were like, Terri, you're going to prep too.
You probably were not happy about that.
I was not one bit happy about that.
You were a freshman at LC.
Yes.
Probably had friends. And then you got to transfer to...
No, I had friends I'd had since elementary school.
Yep. That's Spokane.
Yeah.
Right?
And so I end up going to prep.
Because you went to Grant.
Yes, I went to Grant.
Right over here.
Yes.
And you grew up right on 16th?
Yeah, right on Southeast Boulevard.
What house?
It's the only house facing, it's that middle house. It's now, it's so funny. They just remodeled it. It used to be this beautiful, 50s.
Rancher kind of thing.
Yeah, and now they added this thing in front of it that, anyway, so it's right.
It's up on 16th-ish, though, right?
Yeah, it's right between 16th and 17th on Southeast Boulevard.
Crazy.
So
I mean, we're 2 blocks away.
Yeah.
And here you are, full circle.
Yeah, it's totally. And but anyway, so here I am going to prep, and but almost immediately the teachers were like, "Oh, this girl's smart. We need to get her into the honors classes." I was in the choir because I'd actually played violin in the orchestra at LC, and before that, at Libby Junior High, which doesn't exist anymore.
No, it doesn't exist anymore. Right.
And so since there wasn't an orchestra, I shifted to choir, which again would eventually be a life-changing thing. Because the next year, John Walk joined the faculty.
Oh, so he was there the next year after you were there. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. So you
were early in that.
Yes,
because we were his first. Have a lot in common. Okay, yeah. We're both. Well, we both went to prep for one. We're both the 7th of 8 of the 7th kid. Mm-hmm. I'm 7 of 8. You're 7 of 7. Catholic families, grew up here, and we were both in choir.
Yep.
John Walk had started early, so I didn't realize that we both were in plays that Jack Delahanty directed. And
that's right.
There's a lot. And as I read this, I'm like, no way.
Yep.
Super cool.
I was the fiddler in Fiddler on the Roof.
You were the fiddler. Okay.
I was also in the Me Nobody Knows, but I think that was before.
So that was before me.
Yes.
Yeah, but Fiddler, I kind of remember. I was thinking it was my freshman year. I wasn't in Fiddler. We did like Little Abner and stuff.
Yeah.
You were probably gone.
I was. Because.
Or you were too busy running track.
Yeah.
That might.
Or being on the school newspaper.
But we were in jazz choir together.
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
And I remember you. I was like, whoa, she's cool.
Yeah. That was pretty cool.
You were really cool. You're still really cool.
Yeah. So anyway, I owe prep because I always tell the story, and it's in that book, that, being in a public school was great. I still would have been a smart student. I still would have gone to college.
Oh, yeah.
But prep made the difference between me going to, say, University of Washington, great school, nothing against it, versus Stanford. And basically, prep opened that door for me because
Right.
the teachers were supportive. They encouraged me.
They actually said you should go for that.
Exactly.
You would
Well,
not have
no,
thought of it.
no. But you know who the person who made the biggest difference? Just in the one moment in time, I'm walking through the hallway. I'd taken the PSAT. I was a, semifinalist for the national merit, and he stops me in the hallway and he says, "So Terry, you did so great. Are you going to be applying to Harvard and Yale and Princeton?" I'm like, "What?
What are you talking about?
What are you talking about?" So I mean, that was
Who was
like,
it?
What's that?
Who was the
Oh, that's
person?
Father Pat. Father Pat.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, he was the principal.
The principal.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry. I
Pat.
said
Father Pat. Stewart? No, Pat.
No, Patrick.
I know.
Yeah, this is horrible.
I know.
Okay.
No.
No, see, I turned
Not
60
horrible.
next
We'll edit
month,
this out.
So.
It's a lot. This is 40 years ago. Okay,
Yes,
so you're
yeah.
you get a pass. We'll
Yes.
think of it by the time this is over.
Yeah,
but
no, it'll
I
come
know
back to
exactly
me.
what
But
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
yes. Anyway, so then I had another friend who was a year ahead of me, Jen Grant, who is not the Jennifer Grant, who's Cary Grant's daughter. But she went, it was the funniest thing. So Jen Grant goes to Stanford and Cary Grant's daughter is there at the same time.
No way.
So
And they're both
everybody-
named
yeah.
Jennifer. And did she use it to her advantage at any point?
No, I don't think so. She
should've.
just, but she would have people
See,
come.
I would have.
Yeah. People all the time were like, "Oh, you're Jen Grant." I'm like, "Not that Jen Grant." But
That's
anyway,
amazing.
so I talked to her about Stanford and said, "Yeah, you should apply." Blah blah blah. And then,
Well, I went to school with Bob Newhart's kid.
Really?
Rob Newhart at Gonzaga.
wow, very good.
You switched position, yeah.
Indeed. But then Terry Irwin, who
Yeah,
was
basketball
one of the,
coach.
Yeah, but he was also a counselor.
Yes.
And
that's right,
he reached
was.
out to Stanford and said, "Hey, you got to check out this girl, Terry Gibbons. She's got the grades and the speed to get into Stanford."
Terry did that.
Yes, Terry did that.
Wow.
So I started getting calls from the coach.
love Terry Irwin. He's great.
Brooks Johnson at Stanford, and it's the only school that recruited me for track. Which I looked today and I'm like, what the hell? Where was UW and Wazoo?
Right, where
And
were they?
I don't know.
WCU's got a great program. Oregon.
I know. I was just like,
Northwest. Kid, what are you
I
doing?
was, Greater Spokane League champion.
What
100,
was that?
200,
How did
400
they
long
not?
jump. And I
It's
was.
not like they don't have good programs, all of them.
I don't know what it was. I mean, it was 1983, maybe.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, and Terry Irwin was Stockton's coach at high school
Right.
basketball coach. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. And anyway, so Terry knew the score, and so and the funny thing is I only applied to Oregon and Stanford.
That's it? Two
That's
colleges?
it.
That's it.
2 colleges. I mean, I pretty much had an automatic admit to UW because it was over the
State
Yeah.
college. And
yeah
you're going to get
but
it. Yeah.
so I was like, well,
Back then, anyway.
Yeah, back then.
Now it's harder.
Well, now I know my son wanted.
Oh,
to
Emma
be-
got in there. I was like, how did you get in? 150 kids applied. 6 got in the year she got in.
Yeah.
Crazy. It's more, I mean,
No,
that
my
school has
son
become amazing.
was interested in UW, and he didn't get in. So
It's a tough place, man.
It is a very tough place now.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's how I ended up at Stanford. But I give credit to prep, and the other aspect of it, which I think was important, was the I was Catholic.
Right.
Our choir would sing at mass, and all of those things were really important to me.
Yeah. Well, and this book is really about. It's a very vulnerable book.
It is.
I mean, you said chapter 3 is the hardest thing I've ever written, probably, or something.
Yes.
But it is honestly about growing up Black in Spokane.
It is.
So what have you taken away now that you've seen this? I mean, the other thing about this book is it ends literally like 2 months before January 6th hits.
That's right.
The world's changed a little,
Yes. it-
including who's running for president right now.
Yep.
Kamala Harris was
That's right.
not in
The picture.
the picture. Certainly not then. Not even 3 months ago.
Right.
What is that like now for you to see, that's a possibility?
It's it makes well, it's funny because I've talked to a lot of friends about this. I know exactly where I was that Sunday when Joe Biden announced that he was not going to accept the nomination, and it was like an hour before he announced he was endorsing Kamala Harris, and that was the longest hour of my life because I was just like, okay, what's he gonna do?
Right.
And finally, it's hard to describe, just the knowing what it's like to be, and we're only 10 days apart.
Is that
age-wise.
right, in
She
age?
was born October 20th. I was born October 30th.
Both 1964, the
That's
year of the civil rights legislation passed,
yes, exactly.
which is you talk about and the
Yes.
irony of that.
Exactly. But I mean, it was just so. I don't think many of us realized just how anxious we were about what was going on. And all of a sudden, Joe's not running and she is. And it's like, whoa. And, all of a sudden.
And your hope was that she would, but there was an hour there where you didn't know.
Yeah, that's right. And so all of a sudden, the world sped up to about 100 miles an hour. And,
Were you surprised by that feeling you got? Or
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally. Because I didn't realize how depressed almost so many of us were about what was going on with Biden and so on. It was just, and so all of a sudden there was a sense of release. We could actually have hope. I mean, there's no guarantee with what's going to happen.
Oh,
in
no.
the election.
There's no guarantee he wouldn't have won.
That's right.
I mean, really.
Yeah. I mean, he still thinks he would have won.
He might have.
And he very
a
well
lot of
might
people
have.
think he might have.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I mean,
but there isn't the energy.
No.
He could not have created
No.
the energy
No,
that's
he
there
would-
now. There's
yeah.
no way.
No, not at all. And, I...
On whatever political spectrum you are, you got to acknowledge this is...
Oh, yeah, the DNC was 100% different than it would have been. with
I've
Joe
never
Biden.
seen a more cohesive... I mean,
Well,
I'm in
see,
the
that's
business
the
of
funny
stories
part.
and stuff, and watching that DNC convention would not have been that way.
No, and as a and I am a political scientist. This is
Right.
this is my bread and butter. I'm not
There you
doing
go.
it because I'm
No.
a huge fan of the
And I'm a
Democratic
story
Party.
guy.
Yeah,
So I was looking at always through that lens.
exactly. And I'm
impressive.
looking at it from strategy, right?
Yep.
And I'm looking at, oh my God, they pulled this together
in such a short amount of time.
so quickly
And so well.
I mean, you know how
Oh,
hard
those
it is
videos
to
were-
do those
oh,
videos.
I know. I was watching that video on her life where Doug, and
Yeah.
who you have a lot. So you have a tremendous amont of. That's where I was going with this. You
Yes.
and Kamala have a lot in common,
common,
right?
yes.
Both married to white, successful white dudes, really
Yep.
smart. He did an incredible job introducing her.
That's
one,
right.
super empathy's all over this, which
Yes.
is all over this book. We'll
Yes.
talk about that.
And-
but also just how well they produced that video. I'm like, that was, it is. That's a short window.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it's been a benefit.
Yes.
In some ways, it hasn't.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
So,
well, it's been a benefit in the sense that she didn't spend the last year getting beat up,
that's right.
So, and she's a new face, even though she's been vice president, she hasn't been out in front.
People
And
haven't
so-
really met her yet.
That's right, exactly. And plus, there's always the fact that I was, even though we'd had Obama, I was concerned that how are people going to react to a black and Asian woman?
Oh, completely.
And-
black Asian woman.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to go aside really short here. My dad, amazing guy, ran for office back in the 60s, Kennedy Democrat, big, a lot like your dad probably in terms of very big in his faith, Catholic life, just a gentle dude, really smart. And right before he died, Obama had just announced that he was going to run, and Dad had mesothelioma, so he couldn't talk very well, and he could only talk in one-word answers, and he was really astute. He and Tom Foley were friends in high school,
Wow.
used to ski together, so he, has pretty in the know guy, very smart about stuff, and he was 80 at that point, old white guy, and I go, what do you think of this Obama guy? And he goes, he couldn't say many words. And he just says, I go, do you like him? And he shakes his head. And then I go, well, what do you think? And he goes, too soon.
Interesting.
And I thought at the time, what did that mean?
Right.
Like, was that Dad's a racist?
No.
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 But I think he just knew America may not be ready for this
That's right.
leap.
That's
And
right.
in a lot of ways, what happened with Trump is because it might have been.
Yeah.
And now you jump ahead, not very farther in time,
That's right.
right? I mean,
Yep.
our world only knows men as president, that
That's
archetype,
right.
and certainly 99%, 98.5, whatever, white men.
Yes.
And now you introduce black, Asian, female.
Yes.
That is another big leap.
It is 100%. And
Am I right about that? I think that's what he meant.
Yes. No, your dad is not racist.
No, I know he's not. I mean, I knew he was. He
there-
loved him.
Yeah. No.
But he was like, I'm worried about, I don't know if he was worried about his personal,
Well, think
safety.
about it. I mean,
but just like,
well-
I don't know. It's yeah.
yeah.
But, too soon. And then you follow that up with Hillary,
Yes.
right? And I was like, I often thought, what if Biden and Hillary had switched
Yes, that would have been
places
a huge difference
in terms of
No.
our ability to handle. And man, Trump he tapped into that white, especially rural America, being afraid of where'd our America go?
Yeah. Yep. And, you know, they have valid grievances. The problem is they're
Yes.
directing them at the wrong people.
That's right.
You know, I say this all the time because, you know, I've studied the far right in Europe, and it's the same thing there as it is here. You know, people see their world changing, and they, you know, and you're right. A lot of people were not prepared for Barack Obama. But, you know,
But man, he was cool and good.
yes, and he did a good job. He got
did.
reelected.
He did.
You know, and the too soon thing, a lot of us were thinking that, you know, so it wasn't just your dad.
Yeah.
You know, from my perspective, too soon. Well, he just became a senator, you know.
Right.
He
Well,
hasn't
that was,
been
I think that's really what he meant.
yeah, he hadn't been
It's
a
like, he's
senator
not
that
very old.
long, and
Right.
he wasn't
But
that
it
old.
was Jack Kennedy, for
Yeah,
God's
well, he's
sakes.
my age, you know.
Right,
Again,
right,
you know,
yeah, right.
Obama.
He is your age.
Yes, he is. 100%.
Crazy. He and Kamala are the same age,
Yes.
virtually.
Yes.
Wow. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a year older, maybe.
Maybe a year
but,
older, not
but
much.
Michelle Obama's, I think I think she's the same age too. So you know, me, Michelle, you know, Kamala.
I mean,
we're
you
all,
three,
you know,
the power trio,
yeah,
the Three Musketeers.
yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of truth to that. I'm not kidding.
Indeed. But anyway, I think that she is, you know, it's not too soon for Kamala.
I don't think so either.
And the reason I believe that is she's the right Black Asian woman. You know, she's been a prosecutor.
Well, that's exactly where I was going.
Yep.
She's prosecuting a case here now.
She is. And that's why, you know,
Against a convicted criminal.
well, exactly. And I'm like, people are
Sorry.
like, well, we're all worried about her debate perform. This woman, have you ever seen her at a congressional
Dude,
hearing?
or in a courtroom.
In a
I would not want to
courtroom?
be across from her.
Yeah.
He certainly didn't want to be. He never looked at her
No.
once.
I know, except when she walked. You know, I knew this debate was over the minute she walked
Me too.
across the stage and shook
Me
his
too.
hand.
Me too. Exactly.
Because he was
like,
backing off.
Yep, and she introduced herself.
That's right.
Yeah, he was backing off.
Yes.
Very interesting body language there. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. We have a lot. Similarly,
We're gonna sit here talking about politics the whole time. We gotta,
No, I know. We got to talk about other stuff. One of the things that, you know, you had a great line in here I'm going to read from fairly early on in the book about, you know, why do I, it really struck to me because it's around story.
yes.
And so much of what we've got to do in terms of being empathetic, I don't know if I'm saying this right, and to change the narrative about race is to do it through stories, right? So
right.
you wrote this is a great little quote that I snapped. This you said, like, telling our stories is a way to reach people of different backgrounds who can develop the understanding that will help all of us change institutions at all levels, from our local schools to city councils, even within our own homes. We need to stop reproducing the discourse and ideas that have perpetrated racism. This work must be done at every level.
Yes.
And that's what I do. That's why I'm doing this podcast.
Right.
Because it started in COVID where I had time and we could do this, and like a lot of podcasts did. But it really is about, you know, how do I give up space
Yes.
for stories to get told,
That's right.
and how do we do that? What did you mean by that little paragraph?
Well, you know, I this whole book revolved around my own journey of understanding who I am, how I got to be where I am today, and what were some of the things that I feel I had to overcome. And part of that was racism within my own family, you know, and that's where I'm really vulnerable, right? I talk about internalized oppression and you know, the way my parents didn't interact with a lot of Black people in Spokane.
Right. So as growing up right here,
Yeah.
there's another line in that book that I got to read. I'm
Okay.
almost done reading. I promise I won't
No
be reading more of
worries.
this, but I love this book. It's phenomenal. It said, you know, in Spokane, right? We lived on Spokane South Hill, and as Dwayne Mack found in his research on Blacks in Spokane, Black residents were restricted by covenant and custom from the South Hill.
Yes.
Right here.
Right here.
And you found yourself, I think a big part of the story and about a part of your life is, where do I fit?
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
How do I, as we've helped Gonzaga Prep build over the last few years, their slogan, find your place.
That's right.
You kind of, it was hard for you.
Yeah.
Right? Because your family, a dad who, like my dad, that generation, right?
Yep.
Greatest generation. I mean, very accomplished
Yes.
at Fairchild Air Force Base, rose to master sergeant level. But, there's a photo of him in there that is
Yes.
incredibly powerful. There's like 20 dudes that are all his compatriots, really.
Yes.
Only black guy in that squadron.
That's right.
And the Air Force is different than the other branches of military, for sure.
Yep.
What you talk about is not being exposed to other black families.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna go in the Hall of Fame at Gonzaga Prep, which congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have the honor of doing a video about your life, which is really cool. Daryl Stevens just went in last year.
Yep.
Daryl was one of the same neighborhoods, same Sacred Heart.
I knew Daryl.
You knew Daryl,
Yep.
but you didn't really get to hang out with him. You didn't get to hang out with other kids.
Yeah, there's a black family just down the street at the last house on 17th. And my parents didn't interact with them. And one of the barriers was Catholicism, right? Because, I often joke, and I may have another memoir in me that's just growing up black and Catholic in Spokane, Washington.
Yes.
Because most black people in Spokane go to the black church,
right?
Including like my brother-in-law.
James Watkins is on the board with you, right?
Exactly.
Happy Watkins. He was on my podcast. He talked about growing up black in Spokane.
Yeah.
But went to Rogers.
Yep.
And now his kids went to prep, and that was a big move. He got a lot of crap for it.
I'm sure, but and our family was known, right? Because as you know, my brothers were big sports.
Craig was a phenomenal running
back.
My
brother
Craig,
and my brother Roy,
and track.
Yeah,
and Roy too. Yeah.
Yeah. No, Roy was well known for his exploits at Lewis and Clark. And then because there were 7 of us, our family was well known at Lewis and Clark.
Well, like you say, you can't hide in church.
That's right.
When 7 of you show up in the pew, I mean, I know that feeling. The crew shows up, right? And that was. Big Catholic families.
Yeah, our parish is just down the road.
Right.
Sacred Heart.
Crazy.
And so there was this uncomfortable feeling of, why aren't we, I mean, I knew almost most of the black people in Spokane. There aren't that many of us. And, back then.
At prep, there were 9.
Yeah, exactly. 9.
And I was surprised by that number.
Yeah.
I'm like, as I look back, I'm like, you're one of the few black people I know.
Right.
In my life. I'm 57.
Right.
And I'm like, I bet I know I have a relationship or, some kind of connection to about 20 people.
Right.
That are African American. That's just, what the hell is that? Mm-hmm. That's nuts.
Yeah. And, obviously I have much more in my life now.
Oh, yeah.
But,
you were in the same boat.
Yeah, exactly. Back then, I mean, and the hard part was the feeling of discomfort, right? I didn't talk, people would say you talk white, that kind of stuff. And,
the Oreo comment.
Yes, exactly. And I guess
you mentioned in here.
Yes, I do. And
that wasn't for me. That was
yes, it was.
That was your description.
Yes,
and don't want to.
Many people who are listening to this who are black will
know what that means.
Know what that
quickly.
Means. Yeah. Yes, and so the interesting thing to me is that me and my siblings have tried to overcome that. Right, we've purposely tried to be more engaged and involved in the black community in various ways. But to me, the work had to be done, and that's why I talk about we have to understand our own internal bias, right?
Yeah,
and and it's hard because it's like, well, why, I had to think through, why did my parents, raise
that was the question I wanted to ask you. Why did they do that? Well, was it even conscious?
Right. It wasn't, I don't think at all. I think, the book that helped me understand my parents was The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson. Mm-hmm. And that's an amazing book. And my mom was, it talks about the great migration of black people from the South to the North and the West. So her book was the first thing I'd read that really focused on somebody coming from Louisiana and going to the West, which there's a huge black population in Los Angeles, Oakland, other places.
Oh, yeah.
And including people who came to Spokane, right? And to Seattle.
L.A. for sure.
Exactly. And I have probably hundreds of.
Well, and your family your parents lived in Watts, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Before they came here.
yes. And yeah, so it's because that's where. Well, actually, they met in Los Angeles, and my dad was stationed there
at the dance.
Yes, and
or at the bar.
The
something.
bar, the
yeah.
bar. Yes, and that cute guy came and talked to my mom. But the interesting thing is to me from that whole perspective is that they were looking for a better life for their kids, right? That's the bottom line,
Right.
They wanted to be in an environment. So think about what Los Angeles was like in the late 1960s, right? I mean, it would have.
When did they move? Do you know?
Well,
it was like
they were they were in the military. So they were bopping all over the place.
Right,
they met in L.A. in the early 50s.
Yeah, in fact, they were married the same year my parents were married. There's another similarity. Oh yeah, 1952. So
there we go.
Exactly when my parents were married.
Yep.
So yeah, very similar track.
Indeed, and anyway, so they were in L.A. Went to England. Then back to LA, then Texas and Louisiana, then Spokane. And actually, after when I was 3 or 4, we moved to upstate Michigan, and we lived there for a couple of years. But my parents had already bought the house up the street here.
Yeah.
So they rented it out while we were gone, and then we moved back and moved in, and then stayed. And my dad retired from the military when I was 7. So
wow. But yeah, you're right. L.A. in the 60s.
Yeah.
I mean, there were riots going on.
Yep.
Right.
No,
Martin Luther King gets shot. In fact, there were this neighborhood. I know a guy that went to Grant and was in grade school the day he was shot.
Oh, really?
And he was one of the few white kids.
Wow.
And was beat up on the way home.
Wow. Yeah, we were not here when that happened because we were in Michigan.
Right.
But we came back not long after that.
Yeah, and he actually understands why.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
He's like, I probably would have done the same thing,
Yeah.
Tough day.
Very tough day. And Bobby Kennedy and
right
all of that. And
Bobby was shot in LA.
That's right. So, and I talked to my cousins who lived in LA, and they're just like, oh, it was so tough. I mean, there were gangs even back then, and they had to navigate all of that. Anyway, there's so much we could talk about just in terms of the decline of the neighborhood where my parents originally met in LA. It was a vibrant middle-class community.
Right.
And then when all the defense industry went away, they were kind of trapped in, not my parents, but other people who lived there were kind of trapped as their property values declined and so on.
So being here, you didn't really have the chance to, and you even talk about your freshman orientation at Stanford.
Yeah.
You had a choice to make that
Yes,
day.
I did.
Tell me about that story.
Well, yeah.
To me, really interesting.
Well, it starts even before that because when they sent the you had to fill in a little card for your housing preferences. And on mine, there was a stamp on it that said, do you want a black roommate? And I was like, why would I specify a black roommate? That doesn't make sense to me.
Right. It doesn't growing up here. It wouldn't. Or whatever.
Yeah, so I didn't, and I did not get a black roommate, but I know others who did. And anyway, so
you wish you would have put that?
No, I don't think it's right.
Yeah, right. I don't think so. What kind of a weird question. You never asked that today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is it's like, are we? I don't know. I mean, look, some people might disagree with me, but I think it's coddling students to say. I mean, when you go out in the world. Are you going to get a choice to have a black office mate?
This life is about the stuff that comes your way and how you adapt to it.
Exactly. And if there's an issue with black students adapting, back in 1983 when I was starting at Stanford, I mean, there's things, I think it was fine that they had the black orientation.
Man, you didn't expect that coming, that question.
No. And so... Anyway, the problem with the black orientation is it was the same time as our dorm orientation. And I was like, well, do I go to the black orientation and miss out on all this? Because there's that whole first part of freshman year is about bonding with your dorm mates.
Completely. Yeah. Oh, and my daughter, Emma, the UW, she missed. She got 1 quarter, and then everybody got sent home. Boy, the impact that's going to have.
Oh, my God.
I know, right? She's just starting to make friends, and see ya.
Yeah.
That's a tough, those guys they're dealing with a lot.
Yes, they are, including, especially my younger son is
dealing
with
there you go.
That,
you know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
But anyway, so I felt really uncomfortable and but,
You chose to just do the dorm.
That's
mate.
right. Yeah, I chose to do the dorm, and it's not like I didn't have a chance to interact and meet with the black students.
Right.
I did. It was
Right.
fine. I have many black friends who I made during my time at Stanford. But
Well, 1% in Spokane,
Right.
black population, to 7 at Stanford. Stanford's not exactly a hotbed of
No,
African
it's
American
not,
activity, but it's a jump.
Yep, it was, and I have many friends. I mean, we see each other at reunions and so on, and it's fun. And I've become, in many ways, I've come to embrace, that the community and to be, I feel
Appreciative of
yes,
it. Yeah.
exactly, and not that I wasn't appreciative. It was just. Like I said, I had to get over my own internal, because nobody out there. This is the thing you learn when you try to start listening to your own internal voice: is nobody else is saying this to you, right? This is what you're saying to yourself,
Right. And where did that come from?
And I talk about my 20s as being my years of cognitive dissonance, right? And so I think it's true for everybody, but my cognitive dissonance was about who am I, right? And
How do you fit?
where do I fit in? What's my identity? And by the time I get to the end of my 20s, I'm just be who you are.
Right. Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. People aren't out there, checking boxes and
Well, the more you look back in your life, you realize, oh, there's a reason for that. You growing up here is a gift.
Yeah.
Especially with the work that you do. I think
Yes.
to be able to have this perspective and
Yes.
write about it,
Yeah.
you couldn't have that if you'd grown up in Louisiana or even LA.
No, absolutely not.
No way.
And I also am grateful to my parents for making choices based on, wanting to make sure we got a good education,
Right.
wanting to make sure that we were safe.
Right. That you had a
know?
good opportunity in your future. That was their job.
Exactly. And, I can resent various aspects of growing up, but, it's interesting that I'm drawn back to Spokane now.
I bet.
And, I look around and, the South Hill has always been,
I mean, you're literally, we are sitting in the place that was the 7-Eleven you used
That's
to ride
right.
your bike to
That's
or walk
right.
to
That's right.
as a kid. And you're one of the few people that know this used to be a 7-Eleven.
That's right. No, it's absolutely true. We would walk, and then we'd walk by here and go down to the reservoir and play at the tennis courts and all of that. That block at 16th and Southeast,
Right there.
it used to be a woods. We called it the woods.
There weren't
houses there.
Crazy.
And there was a big rock we called Big Boy and a smaller rock we called Little Boy, and we'd climb up and look at the view. And
wow.
we had so much fun in those woods.
Wow.
I'm sad they're gone.
Safe place. Yeah, my kids had a similar one. There's a house there now, and the whole the neighborhood was upset. Like, well, you can't build on our hideaway. That was where they all went and hung out and played and fort and stuff. Yeah, the innocence is gone.
Yeah, like gotta build houses.
We do have to build houses. Totally another subject.
Yes.
Which I spent a lot of time on. Well, you talk about imposter syndrome.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
So
It's not untied to this.
Yes, exactly. It's that sense that that feeling. Do I really belong here? Have I done everything I need to do to really be where I'm at? Yeah, deserving, etc. But then, as I thought about it, and in some ways, my thinking has evolved even more since I wrote the book, is that it's not really imposter syndrome sometimes. There are people who honestly will look at you and see your skin color or your gender and say, oh, you don't belong here. What are you doing here?
And mean it.
Yeah, absolutely. And
don't really feel apologetic about it.
No, it's like,
It's just
wait,
an honest question
Yeah.
from where they stand.
Sure. And yes, there is some, especially in academia, we always feel imposter syndrome because we're always beating up on each other. Being a professor means,
Well, it's one of my favorite lines about college education and the politics of every college university, which you appreciate. But Henry Kissinger used to run Harvard before he became Secretary of State. And he said there's so much infighting in colleges and universities because the stakes are so low.
Exactly. And let me tell you,
Tenure.
I could tell some stories.
I'm sure.
Oh my God.
That's the next podcast.
Yeah, the next podcast we'll talk about leadership and all that. But no, seriously, the imposter syndrome is real. People often feel like, oh, do I really belong here in a sense? But it's also that I talk about just walking into, I always feel like I have to dress a certain way.
Yeah.
you
Well,
know.
you even talked about church.
Yes.
Can you tell the story of your brother and your mom
Yes.
at Sacred Heart Church right down here?
Yes. So,
Which, by the way, I was Craig too at one point. And
well, no, this was Roy.
It was Roy. I
Yeah.
had the same experience.
Yeah.
But my mom. So anyway,
Yeah.
go ahead and tell it.
Well, anyway, so we were always expected to be quiet and prim and proper. I mean, we dressed
to the nine.
Yes, we dressed for church.
Sunday-
I mean, I
Sunday
had
church.
amazing, my patent leather shoes and.
Well, at prep,
hair.
you are always very put together.
Yes.
Very.
I
remember that.
and still am.
Still am. Yeah.
But it was partly, my mom wanting to make sure we were upstand. We acted right. And one time my brother wouldn't stop talking in church, and she actually slapped him and gave him a bloody nose.
That's a slap now.
Yes. And so she had to rush out with him, and I have no idea what people thought, but it was just like, oh my God,
But what you said was that she was almost more embarrassed because of him drawing attention.
Exactly.
Than upset that she had hurt her kid.
Exactly. And it was all about, appearance, being, appropriately dressed and
fitting in.
And it always had, and even, the way I dressed at prep and everything, always had to be a step above.
That's right.
And that's not just in terms of.
Well, part of that's my dad's a sergeant in the military.
Well, yeah.
There's a military thing there too.
Oh yeah,
military kid thing there too.
I mean, I wasn't allowed to wear jeans, and it's funny. I'm wearing jeans today, but I still have a hard time wearing jeans. So and it's funny because I think when I started at prep, we could only wear jeans on Fridays.
Yeah, something like that.
And then they got eased up on that. But I mean, just I just it's still hard for me. I still dress when I'm in the classroom and so on.
Dress to lead though.
Yes, absolutely.
And you're in that position.
Exactly. Yeah. No, you dress for the position, the next position you want to be in.
That's right.
And so there's that aspect of it, but it's I talk a lot about respectability, right? It's the respectability issues. Are we,
because because you're perceived a certain way because you're just black.
Yeah, exactly. Just because you're black, you have
to overcome now and almost overdo it.
Mm-hmm.
And your mom overdid it.
Yes, she did. Big time.
Wow. Super interesting. I just find that. I mean, that's just kind of the reality of it. You also talked a lot about not getting to know your family.
Yeah.
You had a big bunch of cousins.
Yes.
And I can relate a little to this because I don't have cousins. My parents were both only children.
Oh, really?
Which is really interesting. So there's my 7 brothers and sisters and me, and we have no cousins.
Wow. That's amazing.
Isn't that bizarre? I have 2 great cousins I'm going to go see, or, second cousins, or once removed, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That to find out more about my past, but we don't really know anything about that. So I had this disconnect too, and my kids don't even understand that. There's like 60 cousins for them,
right, of course.
that we've all created.
Yeah.
But you actually had cousins you didn't get to know.
Right. I had cousins back in Louisiana. But tons in LA. And what's interesting?
LA's not that far.
Yeah, LA's not that far. So there was clearly a divide between my mom and her siblings and my father and his siblings. And I've gotten to understand that a little bit better over the years.
What have you learned?
Well, I learned, for example...
Like why?
Well... my grandmother on my dad's side was not happy. So it's a long story, but
big question.
Yes.
Big question.
Well, no, I mean, I'll try to give the Reader's Digest version, which most people won't understand that under 40. But anyway,
nobody under 40 is listening to this. Come on.
Yeah. Okay. Right. But anyway,
we're talking to our tribe.
Yes, indeed. But so my dad, he joined the military. His father died while he was in basic training or whatever it was. And so his mom, I know that his mom wanted him to leave the military because she and I found, we looked through my dad's papers after he died. He died in 2001. Way too young, 72. But anyway, we had all his paperwork, and there's this letter from his pastor and his mom saying, asking for him to be released from his military duty.
So he can come back home and take care of the family.
That's right. And he didn't. Now, he did send money back home. But there was something there. He did not want to go back home.
or assume that responsibility. He wanted to make his own way.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
in life.
So,
and the opportunities in front of him were pretty good.
Yes, but I also know his mother was not happy that he had
probably
7 kids.
some brothers and sisters that weren't happy about that.
Yeah, well, yeah, my uncle and his 2 sisters, yeah, for sure. But my grandmother also wasn't happy that he had 7 kids, because it's like, wait, you have to feed all those mouths. How are you gonna help take care of us? So, and I'm extrapolating a bit here, but I think that was a big part.
It was in the air.
Yeah,
had to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you even went back to a family reunion, and even your aunts weren't necessarily telling you all the straight story, right? Covering it up, didn't want you to talk about things.
Oh yeah, no, there was the family reunion in LA where I was trying to get information and
trying to piece this puzzle together.
Exactly, and I didn't, but that generation just doesn't like to talk about stuff, and that is true across the board.
It is,
and it
is true.
The reality is they lived through hell, right?
They did.
My mom was born in 1930.
My mom was 1928, and my dad 28. My dad 29. My mom, same.
Yeah, Dad was 28.
They didn't know what the world was going to be there.
Yeah, they were
literally.
Yeah, they were born, during the Depression. World War II blows up, when they're like
on the heels of World War One, not far before that.
Yeah,
I mean, it was
scary time, dark, world. And also, but imagine my mom was growing up in the Jim Crow South, and rural Louisiana, and I can only begin to imagine. She only got an 8th grade education because they didn't educate black kids past 8th grade.
You're kidding me.
I am not kidding you. They did not offer high school to black kids.
That was your mom?
Yeah. And
what a leap you have made.
Yeah. I mean, my dad finished, my grandfather moved from, basically a very rural Georgia and there's a whole we have to have the genealogy show because there's a lot to talk about there. But anyway, my grandfather and his family moved to Pittsburgh, and so they were also part of the migration.
Yeah.
And so my dad grew up outside of Pittsburgh, and the other interesting thing, which is why I think he was comfortable with Spokane, is where they lived. He was I've seen his senior class picture. He was senior class president, but there's like 3 or 4 black kids.
And you were senior leadership at Prep.
I was girls vice president. And actually all through elementary school and junior high, I was class president.
Yeah, my daughter was too.
Yeah. So I was always
I was ASB president.
Yeah, well, I was always in.
Yeah, I know. I remember that.
Yeah. So so basically, when I learned that, I was like, was
that Alan Giebel? Was he your classmate?
No.
Alan was a year younger, probably.
Yeah, no. Joe Tomberry was our president.
Joe Tomberry was. So I was older than you.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was on this.
Yeah.
Talking about that. Yeah. But Joe, that's right. Joe. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, my dad was, I realized I had all these similarities to my dad when I saw where he grew up. Right. I actually visited Ambom, where he grew up, and seeing those pictures but they didn't talk about that stuff. And but then I turn around, I'm like, well, how much have I talked to? I mean, I wrote a book, so my boys can read it. But how
much have you talked about this with your kids?
Yeah, I mean, I do, but not all the time. And my life growing up here in Spokane is so alien to them,
Oh, right.
Although where we live in Menlo Park, I actually, I remember Andrew was on the track team in his freshman year at Menlo Atherton High School, and Menlo has a very diverse student body. Because you've got the kids from Menlo Park and Atherton who are very wealthy, and then you've got the kids from East Palo Alto who are not so wealthy. But he came home one day from track practice. He's like, Mom, I just don't understand the jokes the other black kids are making and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, honey, welcome to my world.
Code switching.
Yeah, code switching.
Which we'll talk about here.
Yes, but also, you are in a different position. I mean, you live in Menlo Park. They live in East Palo Alto, and they have it.
It's a different culture.
Yeah, and you have a white dad and a black mom, and some of them are mixed race too. It's not, but I mean, it's a class thing, and your mom's a professor, right? I'm not. You're not interested in hip hop. Actually, it's great. My oldest son Andrew he plays bass guitar in a death metal band now.
That ain't hip hop.
It's not. But what I'm most.
My kids are more connected to hip hop than maybe yours.
I'm sure they are. Yes,
they are
100%.
100%.
No, and it's funny because what I love about my boys is they have chosen their own path and direction. Like they don't fall for the fads, or they literally want to do the opposite of what everybody else is doing. But they're it's not
Trendsetters.
Yeah, but it's because they want to do what they want to do. And so I feel like they had that freedom and without feeling weird about it.
Yeah.
That I didn't have.
Right.
So.
Well, the other thing that it's my last reading.
Sure.
Okay, I'm not going to read anymore, but this book's amazing. You really should. People need to read this book. It's phenomenal. You said, most of my life, I believe the narrative that African Americans were moving toward equality, that African Americans were moving toward equality.
Yes.
And there were indeed concrete signs of progress, including the election of Barack Obama. I did too. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, maybe it almost felt that way more for us than what people feel now. I don't. Mm-hmm. Has it gone back? And what did you mean by that? And where's the hope?
Oh, the hope is that people are changing, right? I mean, look.
Well, we can have this conversation, first of all.
Yeah, exactly. The fact that we're
having this conversation
is, I mean, I couldn't have imagined this, 30, 40 years ago.
No way.
I mean, and I know that there are people who still feel uncomfortable. That's why so let's talk about the 6 steps to radical empathy, right? The first step is being vulnerable. And the reason I talk about vulnerability is because I had to be vulnerable and say, the only way I'm going to understand myself better is to really just open up and be willing to acknowledge, the way I was raised, how that impacted my own bias. Right. And I did have bias. I mean, I still have to fight it all the time. And, it comes from so many different areas. But anyway, so, the first step is willingness to be vulnerable, then being, basically being grounded in who you are. And, I think my biggest, I don't know how to describe it, but I always talk about I have the steel core. And the steel core comes from my mother in the sense that it's being very solidly who I am. I feel grounded. I feel like I'm not going to change myself just to make somebody else happy.
Right. You're not. Yeah. You believe in who you are.
Exactly. And that's the being grounded component. And then beyond that, it's just being open to other people's who they are. Right. And then practicing empathy, taking action, and creating change. That's the 6 steps to radical empathy right there. But the most important is that willingness to be vulnerable and look at who you are. I when I do workshops, I have people do, basically a map of who they are. So here's you at the center. Well, I'm a teacher. I'm a runner. Mm-hmm. I'm all these things. But and the thing is, when you start doing that, you realize, oh, well, Frank sang in the jazz choir. We have that in common. The
connection.
Yes. So the important thing is, where do you connect with people?
Right.
People, I get people on these, especially if they don't, they're.
Right. I found a ton of stuff we had in common.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't mean, you're going to be my absolute best buddy, right. But it means that I can have empathy,
right.
And I can practice empathy with you,
yes, because
we have similar life experiences.
Right. And we are talking about it,
That's
which
right.
is the biggest missing.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
People are afraid to say anything.
That's right.
And so then you don't talk. Well, that's not good.
Yes. And
and I'm not just talking about race.
No.
I mean, it's
anything.
Yeah. Diversity of all kinds.
That's right.
I just don't want to go there.
Yeah.
And that, in my opinion, unwillingness to discuss it is what leads to this country being incredibly divided.
That's why it's called, the subtitle is Finding a Path to Bridging Racial Divides. And it's not just racial, right? I mean, I had to do work around,
the non-binary conversation
exactly
affects my
LGBTQI.
my kids.
Yeah, and being understanding of people's the interesting thing is because I'm a world traveler. I study European politics. I'm
Went to school in France for
yeah
a while, right?
yes
We just got back from my kids and I for
oh yeah I
with my
saw.
ex-wife. It was 10 days.
Yes.
It was
Oh my
amazing.
God, that looked like a
It was,
fabulous
oh
trip.
my God, it was
But
incredible.
yes, but I've spent a lot of time in Europe. I'm actually getting ready in November. I'll be going to South Africa and Australia. So I've been to South Africa before, but haven't been to Australia and New Zealand before. So
Damn,
I'll be
you're
going
cool.
there, and I am cool. And I'm talking about spending a month in London and Oxford. So, but it's that cultural humility, right? That I've learned not to make assumptions. And that's the thing that drove me crazy growing up is people making assumptions about me based on what I look like.
Yep.
And putting me into boxes.
Yeah.
And even the fact that I study European politics is very unusual in political science.
Right. I know. That you're studying the the history of the alt-right or whatever.
Yeah.
You are.
Yes.
That must be weird. Like
No, not at all.
No, it's not where you, but I bet you got people going,
Oh, I know. I remember because
who are you to talk about this? Or
yeah,
something?
my first book was Voting Radical Right in Western Europe. And
Right.
this guy I met at a conference like, wait, you're Terry Gibbons?
Yeah.
You're not what
white?
I envisioned. You're not a white guy. Because,
You're not a white guy.
Terry is,
Okay,
it's male or
right.
female. So people don't know. It's like, so they meet me. Like, oh, you're Terry. But you know what?
Interesting. Wow.
When I was doing interviews in Europe, it was disarming because I'd send a note and say, oh, I'd like to come and interview you. And then I'd walk in the door and it'd be like, oh.
I bet they said stuff to you they wouldn't say.
Yeah.
To Terry the white guy.
Yes. Yes.
They
yes,
thought they were going to talk to.
Yes.
Interesting. Wow.
yeah.
Wow. So there's a lot more we could talk about this stuff forever.
We could talk
but
for hours.
I do think a big part of the biggest question is kind of what are you hopeful about now, especially this moment where Kamala enters this. How big a shift has that been, or do you think it will be?
It's still hard to say, but
It is, isn't it?
what I'm
But that hour that
Yeah.
you felt
yeah,
is real.
yeah, it is absolutely. But I'm extremely hopeful, even though I'm still concerned about the election. But the reason I'm hopeful is because of our kids. I look at our kids. Like I was saying earlier, my boys felt totally comfortable pursuing the things that they wanted to do without worrying about what other people thought, etc. I mean, I'm sure there was some of that. They were still teenagers when they first started doing a lot of the stuff they do
The
now.
amount of African American friends that my kids have compared to me is really encouraging.
Yeah. And my boys have, from the time they were in elementary school, they had kids of all backgrounds as friends.
Well, prep's way more diverse now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Remarkably diverse.
Oh yeah. No, it's definitely, I'm really happy with what they've done around Fair Share and all of that. It's really fantastic.
Yes. Oh yeah.
But
Save that place.
Yeah, but I think hope comes from look, there's always going to be, and there always have been, dark forces in this world and people who don't want to get along and who want to just be part of their own little group and not reach out to others. But I'm hopeful that I see this next generation is way more open. I mean, I can't tell you. I mean, it's just, I'm constantly amazed with my boys and how they perceive the world, and obviously they're very, very concerned about things like climate change, but they understand they're a part of what has to happen to create change. And so they aren't it's funny because I'm the one who goes out to the marches and things like that. They would never go with me. But on the other hand, they have a very deep understanding of what's going on in the world.
Well, and when Black Lives Matter hit, you talked about being surprised at who showed up at those rallies.
Yeah.
It wasn't just people of
No, I mean,
BIPOC community.
Well, the whole summer of that summer of 2020
everybody.
was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, we even had a little Black Lives Matter march in my neighborhood in Menlo Park, where there's one other black family.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That encouraged you.
Yes, absolutely. Now, what will make me even more encouraged is if we get a lot of turnout at this, and regardless of the outcome, I just want to see people turning out.
Right. Well, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's going to be. I mentioned code switching.
Mm-hmm.
What is that, and how? And you've experienced it a lot, and you've given yourself some grace around it,
Yes, exactly.
which
Well,
hopefully your kids are learning too.
oh yeah, no, most definitely. So it's interesting because like my husband and I were dating, and he's white, and we would go to family gatherings, and he'd notice I talk differently when I'm around my family, and I'm like, well, yeah, this is the way we talk to each other, and it's we have our own language almost, and and that's what the code switching is, and it's the same when I was just at our American Political Science Association meeting in we're in Philadelphia. And so when I go to a reception that is my black colleagues, like the National Conference of Black Political Scientists, we all have a certain way of talking and joking. And you even see it on Facebook, right? When I'm posting to my black friends, I post very differently than I do to my white friends. And it's okay,
right. Right.
It was like...
It's not, it doesn't change who you are.
No, not at all.
I talk to my friends in high school.
Yeah.
Way different than I'll talk if I'm around business colleagues.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing is like
I do it too.
Yeah, everybody does it.
Yeah.
And it's for somehow people seem to think it's something that just black people do. It's not true at all. Everybody does it.
Yes.
When you're in the office, do you talk the same way as you do with your kids?
At a bar
Or
with
at a
your
bar?
friends? No.
No. So this
no.
whole issue of code switching, it's not really. It's just we talk differently.
Right.
Because actually, people were giving Kamala a hard time about it.
Yeah.
Recently
Right.
about
and Obama too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
How come you're a preacher all of a sudden now over here?
Yeah.
And you're not like that when you give this speech here. It's like,
Right.
well, you're talking. You assume the audience you're with.
Yes, exactly. And in a sense, it's
Nothing
empathy.
wrong with that.
Right?
Yeah.
That is empathy. When I see who is here in front of me, and
Assimilate to that audience and
exactly
give them the respect they deserve.
That's right. And in a sense, it
Fit
is a
in.
form of respect. It's like, okay, I understand and am part of your culture, and so therefore I can.
Well, and the thing that you've got that I think is a huge gift that I think comes out of here, but is you do have the ability to assimilate to the group that you're with.
That's right.
Whatever you've done, this path that you've had from 16th and Southeast to all over the world, literally, you've learned that ability to adapt.
That's right.
And that's a gift.
Thank you. It really is. And it's something that I'm proud of, that I can walk into a room of world leaders and, my demeanor changes. I'm going to dress a certain way.
Right.
But I can interact.
Yeah. I've had that same compliment from a nun in 6th grade. She's like, you can get along with anybody in any situation.
Yes.
And I'm like, yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Like that's been incredibly helpful for me as I interview people all over the world and talk to them about stuff that, I can find a way to fit. I don't know. It's not that hard. Maybe it is part of this town. Growing up or here or whatever, but
I don't
it's
know.
just
I
a gift that you've got.
I think it's just part of what we all experience growing up. You're with your family, you're with your friends, you're with your coworkers, you have all these different spaces you're in. And it's okay to act one way in this space. When I'm with my friends who I run with, I'm different than when I'm with my friends who, we're working on a project.
Right, right. Well, there's a lot in this book I want to talk about. I mean, for one, just the disparity of sort of the medical realities that your dad went through, who had, I don't know, maybe had he been white, he would have lived longer.
I'm 90% sure he would.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Just that, your COVID,
Yeah.
that stat that I'm going to see if I say this right and remember it, but it was sort of like, African Americans shared in half of the deaths,
right? And
yet we're not half the population.
Exactly, right.
And what's going on there? And
well,
that whole world of, and part of it's, my son, I just got back from Sardinia, 4 days there, and the realization of how well they eat, the food, how good it is. My wife's kind of dealing with cancer and has for 5 years through, she's doing amazing through eating well, and juicing and all that stuff. It's not just that, but the things that we are, and I've come back and I've just gone, I felt at 57 so healthier those 5 days in Sardinia than when I got home, than since I've been home.
Yeah.
I just ate better. The food was better. I knew there weren't processed stuff. And I tell everybody, since I've been back, I don't care who it is, our food sucks.
Yeah.
And everybody goes, oh yeah, it does. And no one disagrees.
Right.
It's like, well, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Why are we okay with that?
Right. And, you can talk about the food desert.
How come when I go to Sardinia and eat some bread, there's 4 ingredients in that bread or 5? But if I buy bread here, there's 17?
Yeah. Well, and plus the genetically modified, wheat, which is
That's
just out there in the pollution.
right here.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I developed gluten
From
intolerance.
some of the best people in the world.
Absolutely. 100%.
that are so proud of what they've done, and they should be.
Yes.
They've fed the world.
I was going to say, that's what,
It's not
as I'm driving.
black and white, as they say. Right?
That's right. As I'm
It's not.
driving from, Seattle to Spokane, and I'm driving through especially from Spokane to Pullman,
Yeah. Oh, stunning.
It's stunning. And also, I've always growing up here was so proud of the fact
Me
that
too.
we were the bread basket.
That's right.
We were growing all
literally
this food.
is.
We used to go get the fresh corn and all of that. And it was just something that made you really proud.
Very.
But now I'm gluten intolerant because we've been modifying, and it's not the farmers who are doing it.
No.
It's the farmers, the people who create the seeds and so on, who are making them more and more gluten filled.
Right.
So that
And the demand of having to feed the world, you have to make compromises,
That's
and
right.
they've been okay.
yeah.
But now we're paying.
Yeah, with our help.
And most importantly, the African American population has been.
Yeah, and so it's really interesting because there's a genetic inheritance that comes from the era of slavery and all of that, where we were. I just read this book, As We Descend by Jessamine Ward. It's just stunning book, but it's like thinking about the treatment, the malnutrition, all of those things. It's funny because people talk about inherited trauma, and it's not just that you had the Holocaust, things like that. It's that people were physically, diminished, and that is passed on.
Yeah.
Generation after
Right.
generation. So, I'm now having to take blood pressure medicine and Lipitor, and because and I've been monitoring all of these things because I knew my parents had heart disease.
Much more susceptible to
Exactly.
that than I would be, or my kids would.
That's right. And I mean,
Just a fact.
I'm an athlete. I work out all the time, and I was able to.
Oh, that's okay.
Sorry, I was able to stave off, all of that for longer than my siblings were. But I'm hitting 60, and now I'm having to take all the medication, and I'm still exercising. I try to eat right. Not all. I certainly didn't last night, but in general, I try to eat right, and it's just hard to. But the broader problem with African American community is that we have the susceptibility, and then we don't have the same access to healthcare, right? I had a doctor who didn't believe me I had endometriosis, right? And I finally found a doctor who believed me. And
You think you would have had you been white?
yeah, basically the doctor who did finally treat me said, "Oh, I bet your doctors told you didn't have it because black people don't get endometriosis."
Whoa.
Yeah.
What the hell is that?
Yeah. It's all and then on the other side, we know that black people are more likely to have heart disease and all these things,
Yes.
but the doctors don't pay attention. I learned so much doing that chapter on healthcare. It was
Yeah,
just
I
stunning.
that surprised me
Yeah.
in here, just how thorough it was, and just kind of going back and repiecing your dad's life, and
Yeah.
and the impact that had. And he did have an incredible, business here that had a huge impact on this community, and he did everything. Yeah, and that's a big loss for you. That must have been really hard.
Oh yeah, it was really hard, and my mom too.
Yeah.
5
Yes.
years later, she had a stroke,
Right.
and she'd been on. I knew there was she had that susceptibility because from when I was a teenager, she'd been on blood pressure medication and all kinds of things, and anyway, I could go on. And then there's the mental health aspect of it as well, which is just not dealt with very well in the black community.
So what can I do?
What can you do?
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
doing it right now.
Am I? Why? Because it really is about radical empathy, and
That's
it's
right.
about dealing with this. Why do you say that? Why am I doing it? I guess.
Because you're spreading the word, and since from the moment we reconnected on LinkedIn and started
Yeah.
talking, the fact that you are so open, to this, and that you're learning from it, right?
Tons
That
from
the
this.
whole point of this book is not necessarily that you're going to go out and change Spokane, although you do in various ways.
Little little
Yes.
things here and there.
But it's to help people understand why things are the way they are. It's not. It's like, that person who's homeless. There's a lot of things behind that. It's complicated.
Yeah.
It's not just that this person did badly in life and deserves to be on the street.
Right.
Or, this black person who didn't get the promotion when it looked like they should have. Why did that happen? What can I do to talk to the management and say, hey, that guy really deserved that? It's about having, empathy for people who've lived through, really difficult situations in life and, showing care and concern. So there, if not all of us is going to run for office or be out marching in the streets, it's the little things. It's the next time you're in a conversation and somebody starts throwing around racist comments, you say, hey, whoa, stop.
Right. Yeah, stand up for it.
Yeah. And
speak when you can.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that you're in the epilogue there at the end there. It's, can we fight racial hope with radical empathy?
Yes.
And that's, racial hate. I'm sorry.
Right.
Can we fight racial hate with radical empathy? It's kind of the only way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, and it's stop putting people in boxes. We all have a range of talents and things we can do, and it goes beyond just the basic stereotypes.
What's next for you?
Well,
What are you excited about? Because this was a triumph, I think.
Well, I've got the next book. Actually, I just got the next book is Reckoning, and it is all about what people are actually doing to implement radical empathy. So you can read that one.
Okay, cool.
More, and when it comes out, we'll do another
Reckoning.
podcast. But that's going to come out next summer. I've got a lot of editing to do, and but I really wanted to do a follow up because every time I do a talk or a workshop, it's the same question: what can I do? Even though at the end of each chapter, I talk about
you do no, you have little things we can do.
Exactly.
Actually, super helpful.
But I wanted to do something bigger, like from the individual level all the way up to international organizations. What are people doing? And it's in a way, it's about hope. Can we have hope? Are there things, and it's coming out at a critical time when DEI is under attack. And, I have to say, I'm not a big fan of that term DEI because diversity, equity, inclusion.
Yes.
A lot of the work that has been done has just been too focused on, I'm going to run you through a workshop and then you're going to change.
You're checking a box.
Yeah, it's checking a box. That's another reason I wrote this book. It's like, look, people have to start here. It's not.
Yeah, you got to really read it.
Yeah.
You got to really do the work.
Yeah, it's a lot of
Instead
work.
of
It's
just,
not,
I made myself feel better because I went through this.
Oh, yeah. And,
I
just started my new job at UBC and I have to do all the videos and the modules. And one of them is about, inclusion and equity. And I'm like, yeah, I know this stuff. But it's like, everybody,
Of course you do.
you zoom as fast as you can through the training. And
Is it really sticking?
Yeah, it's not. Because, I talk to colleagues and even though they're incredibly well-meaning, they really haven't done that internal work.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I guess we can all do a little more of that.
And it's ongoing; it's never ending, and it's a circular process. It's not just okay. I was vulnerable today, so I'm done with that. No, it's constant because if you don't get yourself in the mindset that I have to be willing to be open and honest and vulnerable all the time, and it's extremely difficult, but it's the only way to make sure that you're growing and becoming a better person and having empathy for people. And we get so closed off and defensive, and I'm really hoping
it's easier to go in your corner over here.
Yeah, exactly.
People like you that you think are like you.
Yeah.
Than it is to actually do this.
Yes, exactly. But
it's not doing any, it's just making it worse.
Well, the thing is,
separating us more.
If I have one message I wanted to leave people with is that, we're raising all the boats, this, the world isn't a pie, you've got this piece of it and this person's got that piece of it. This country is built on the fact that we can, increase the pie. It's
right.
Not that,
that we cut it.
Yeah, we don't cut the pie. We are constantly
we're making a bigger one.
The pie. Immigrants come to this country and have since
the
beginning, and always been able to do more and more and more and more.
That's right.
And so we need to lift all boats, not basically cut off the the tie to the line and drift out to shore and not be able to.
Well, it will be the thing that kills it.
Yeah.
I think if it continues.
Yes.
It's what's killing it.
Yeah.
Making it worse.
Yes.
Yeah.
We just have to be more open and willing to work with each other.
Last question. If you could wave your magic wand and change one thing about all this, what would it be? You get to be in charge, Terri.
Oh, boy.
You are the queen in charge.
If I could change one thing, I guess it would be our education system. K through 12 specifically.
Really?
Yes, because it's gotten more segregated. We're almost as segregated now as we were in the 1960s. And that's partly, so, I mean, if you, to fix that, you have to fix housing patterns, you have to fix access to good jobs, all these things. So, but if we could really put more resources and, expertise, I mean, teachers are leaving because they aren't getting paid enough and they aren't supported. They can't live in the communities where they're teaching, all these, and that will also affect like police and fire and all these things, right? And so I think we should be pouring as much resources as we can into pre-K. I mean, I think education should start with preschool, right? And support for it.
Yep.
And, so we have Head Start and so on. But I mean, I think we should stop looking at it in terms, I mean, obviously people who need more resources should get it, but that we should be thinking about all types of education and pouring resources into it and making sure the teachers are getting what they need to do the job.
And honored.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, well, that's cool. I wasn't sure what you were going to say at all.
I've been thinking a lot.
One.
I've been thinking a lot about that lately because,
That might be another book in your future.
Yeah, it could be. The education conundrum is like, how could I mean, if you the problem is you look at
people will say there's so much. We spend so much money on it.
We have cut and cut and cut and cut. We're constantly cutting education.
That's where it doesn't get told.
Yeah, nobody.
It's all a story problem.
Yeah,
all this is the story problem, Terri.
Yes, you're right. We just need to be able to tell the story.
Well, thanks for telling your story.
I appreciate
Great having you here. We did it. We finally made this work with our busy schedule.
Yes. All good.
All right. Well, come back again. It sounds like we better.
Yes, I think this has to be a regular
Chapter 1.
kind of thing. But thanks again.
MIP Podcast was filmed at the studio of Corner Booth Media. Please sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on social media. You can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple Music, and anywhere podcasts can be found. We'd love it if you'd rate, review, and subscribe to help our podcast grow. Be good to yourself and stay interesting.